there. Okay, thank you for joining us. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Lucirene Licea Claverie, who is going to talk to us about use of English to bolster inclusion in special education centers. Luz Licea has a doctorate degree in education policy with 22 years of overall teaching experience and 12 in EFL. She has participated in several national and international conferences with publications. She is currently a professor at the Escuela Normal Fronteriza, Tijuana. At the end of the talk, there will be some minutes for questions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Luz Licea.
Thank you for the introduction. Well, I am Luz, you may call me by that, and I'm going to present about the use of English to bolster inclusion in special education centers. I hope you enjoyed this. Okay, so who takes care of monolingual English-speaking children who attend the special education centers in Mexican border schools? Because we have them. they come here all the time due to migration, but do they take care? Is there a program? Is there something happening to take care of them? And what happens to them after they enroll in a school? So ENFT, it's in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico, and we border San Diego, California. As you can understand, we are the city with more migration, or where the migration comes and goes through the United States more often. So we do have a lot of population, of English-speaking population living in Tijuana, and leaving Tijuana, coming back. It's a fluctuation kind of thing. So we do have a lot of English-speaking people around here. And there is no information about the topic. There is no particularly information about how many English-speaking people live here, or how many are going into our schools or enrolling to our public schools. There is no program. There was a program, but it never got out from a pilot review, and it was only conducted in Guadalajara, Jalisco, not here. So we don't have a program to include them to any kind of school or any kind of program. And the thing is that the Bachelor of Inclusive Education, which is sort of new since 2018, as you understand and you know, every other bachelor has 6 semesters of English, but they decided inclusive education only needed 3 semesters of English because, and I'm going to quote, children with disabilities don't speak English. And this is a very bad misconception. One, because of course we have people coming here, and of course some of them have disabilities, and of course some of them speak English. And the other one is that depending on the disability we're talking about, everyone's capable of speaking the language. So this is pretty much where I'm coming from. Okay, so the problem is, it goes here. English-speaking children need English-speaking teachers. And the problem is that, well, we are here because we don't have English-speaking teachers, or I mean, it's not the majority of us, right? So what we want to do, or what we need to do, is to train everyone into being English-speaking teachers so they can attend the English-speaking children. When children that come from different country and they get into any kind of school here, any kind of public school, they're forced to learn Spanish. It's some sort of like a punishment. It's like, you came here, now you have to speak Spanish because this is what you have to do because you live here now. So it is harsh for them to have lost their families sometimes, or their friends, their school, their context, and then coming here and then feel all of this harshness of, you have to do this, you have to learn Spanish because, you know, it's complicated. I wouldn't want to be that child. It's complicated. And if to that you put an extra problem or barrier, which is a disability, I think this is quite difficult situation to overcome. So we as teachers, we make language barriers for learning and participation. It's not that they have a language barrier, we put it there. We say like, okay, you have to speak Spanish, you have to do everything in Spanish, so here's your barrier. So you cannot learn, you cannot participate. So what happens when that situation is there is that parents just leave the centers. They know that their children are suffering, they know their children are in stress, they know that they will not speak English to them, or the process will not be soft and kind to them. So they take them out and they do whatever they can to put them in private schools with bilingual approaches. And this is quite sad. So questions, how many people are in these situations? And what can trainers do? And what kind of training do our students need to attend them? And are 3 semesters really enough? Why do they cut it? It's okay, like, well, we cut it, but it's A2 minus enough to attend these things. It doesn't make much sense, but okay. So this is the hypothesis. If teacher trainers from the Inclusive Education Bachelor implement English teaching as part of their practices, trainees could get familiar with English speakers attending special education centers and their necessity to be integrated in the classroom. They could promote English speaking in their classrooms, guaranteeing the English speakers' inclusion in academic success. I'm talking very specifically in special education centers because they are invisibilized, and this is a reality. So if they bring it, they start teaching it, you know, they can feel a little bit more the inclusion of, okay, my teacher speaks English, I can relate to that, and I can stay here, you know, guaranteeing their academic success. So the objective is for trainees to reflect about the importance of bringing the English language to special education centers through English diagnostics and teaching practices, so they can feel motivated to learn or perfect their language skills, as well as to look for strategies to bolster the inclusion of these English speakers in their classrooms. Look for strategies, look how to integrate them, look how to promote their learning. I mean, that's the big goal, right? Anyway, so the specific objectives are to gather information about the number of English speakers that are attending the centers, and for trainees to have a close experience with them, because it's not the same thing to tell them like, okay, you need to speak English because you are going to have English speakers in your classrooms, than to actually have them trained to that experience. And number 3, and most important, to raise awareness of this problem, which is probably particularly from border cities, but it is a problem and the border is quite large. So it's a quite large problem that it's being minimized. So trying to look for similar researches or programs, things that you know, target this problem, I couldn't find any. Not one program from Mexico that studies this. So what I found was studies for Spanish speakers with disabilities learning English, but in the United States. Like when our kids go to the United States and then they have to learn English. I found pretty much a lot of bilingualism and disabilities, like the relationship between both of them, but none of them in Mexico. They were all United States and England. Of course, a lot about special education in Mexico, but nothing targeting English language. And of course, a lot of English teaching in Mexico, but nothing with disabilities. So there's a big gap. There's a big gap there that we should try to cover. I couldn't find any number of cases that was like specific to tell me how many students with disabilities speak English in Mexico. There's no data. Students with disabilities, yes, we have data on that, and people in general with disabilities, but not that they're English speakers. So again, there's a big gap there. my theoretical framework, then I had to went outside Mexico, but of course used the Mexican education program of inclusion. I used in his statistics on disabilities and the ones on for migration. My previous works on how many English speakers attending Tijuana's public schools. I used crash and full immersion and subject matter teaching to actually do this one with subject matter teaching. Richards with reflective teaching, Hambley and von Bohn about their studies in bilingualism and autism, Klinger and Baum with bilingualism and Down syndrome, Aslantas with visual disabilities and bilingualism. Everything is about that, okay? And Lori about communication and language disorders and bilingualism, and Jelland et al. With learning disabilities and learning English. Everything, all of these studies represent very important numbers that they say that everything is possible, and they actually don't represent a problem to actually speak the second language. Okay, so the methodology is a research designed. It's an action research with a qualitative approach. Even though I want to know how many they are, the most important part is to get them attended. So the population and sample are 26 inclusive education trainees with from third semester, because it's their last semester of English, practicing in 2 CAM and 7 USAER. So this is how broad the sample was. And the methods of data collection was direct interview, diagnostic tests, and questionnaires. And they made a video report and a survey in Google Forms. By scope and limitations, well, some centers were not covered. Actually, a lot of centers were not covered. There were only 9 out of 49, if I'm correct. Most teachers prefer other topics. So when our trainers go there and say like, okay, I'm going to teach an English class, they go like, no, 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 no. Teach mathematics or, you know, Spanish or language, whatever, but not English. We also had time issues, mostly because they didn't want them to give them the time. We have lack of permanency from the students, and of course, not enough training for our trainees to actually you know, get a hold of this situation. And some ethical considerations are that, well, of course, all identities have been protected, and the information stated here corresponds to a particular period and a particular center. And this information, I said it may vary, but I said varies from time and location. If you go now to those same centers, the kids are probably not there anymore. So this is a very, very fluctuation. It goes ups and downs a lot. So the procedure was like this. The first stage, it was a diagnostic family background. Our trainees went there, made a family background for every kid to see if they were born in the United States, or if they speak English, or they have family who speaks English, etc. The second stage was an English language diagnostic test for them, like how's their English right now, right? The third stage was a 30-minute lesson, and this lesson was mathematics, but it was in English. So they mixed, it was subject matter, it was teaching mathematics, but they included English. And our first stage was the presentation, reflection, and feedback about the whole practice. Well, talking about results. About the centers, well, as you can see in my left there, what levels in grades they attended. So technically everything from kindergarten to elementary sixth. And the types of disabilities, the most common was intellectual disability, followed by autism, and then Down syndrome. And then we have all of the language disorders, motor disabilities, hearing impairment, visual impairment, and other ones they didn't know. So, but mostly intellectual disabilities. That was the most common one, followed by autism by just 1%. Okay, so about the students that they work with. So they found that 38.5% of classrooms have at least one child with an English background. This doesn't necessarily mean that they are English speakers, but almost 40% of our students have some sort of English background. Either their mother speak English, or they were born in the United States, even if they don't speak English, or they speak English. It's like their first language. But these are the variety of how many are there. What we found was 2 monolingual English speakers. So one kid, she has Down syndrome, and she doesn't speak Spanish. She's Hawaiian and comes from there. Being here, family speaks English, and she has to have a tutor there translating, etc. And the other one, it's another kid with autism, and he has technically the same background. And with both kids, the Spanish language is forced on them. If you talk to their teachers, they force them to speak Spanish in a very harshly way. They tell them like, okay, now they're in Mexico, and they have to speak Spanish because it is their mother tongue. But it's not their mother tongue. Their mother tongue is English. But it's complicated to actually make awareness in how this works. So about the practice, the problem was that, well, some of teachers, they wouldn't let them do the practice, and they had some time limitations. They had to adjust the lesson plan, and but they found out that the students had way more knowledge than they expected, even if the ones that said at the beginning, we don't speak English, and they knew way more than they could cover. So of course, there was difficulty with attention because of their type of disability. And we had 2 unsuccessful cases where the teacher would speak to them, and students wouldn't react. But these 2 cases were with the group of severe autism with no.
Dr. Luz, we cannot hear you. Perhaps there's something with your mic.
Was interested in this new topic or new language. About our trainees, it's important that they reckon the importance of the English language. They experience it and they say, okay, this is important, right? And they had the willingness for participation, but they require more training and they asking for it. But the problem is that this is last semester, so no one can give them more training. They have to do it by themselves, and they won't get other chances of participating like this. So as you can see, 57.7% of the trainees said that they would absolutely keep doing it, but they need support or more training. And well, it ends here. So to discuss this, the problem is not solved. Of course, it's not solved. But it is helping raising awareness that we have this situation and we have to attend them. The name of this bachelor is inclusion, right? It's right there. And it means to include everyone. But for some reason, they're not gathering the information for speakers of other languages to get into this word inclusion. They're just only focusing on disabilities and just hoping no one speaks a different language. And it's kind of sad and important to think that, of course, I'm focusing this in English because of the proximity of the United States and the migration, but we should have programs to include every other speaker of every other language that comes into Mexico or that are from indigenous regions and speak an indigenous tongue. So, well, answering the questions, how many? Well, we have 2, but 38% of the classrooms have English backgrounds. And what can a trainer do? Well, we should keep conducting similar practices to see how many are they, to involve them, to raise awareness on our trainees that they need the language. It's not just, some sort of, okay, now you're going to to learn English and just because if you ever travel. No, it's because it's part of your job, because it's part of what you're going to do for the next 30 plus years. So this is important, I guess. What kind of training do they need? They need a relation between disability and language learning. This is a whole new level. It is. It's not just about teaching them English, and it is not just about them bringing the language to the classrooms, but we need something way higher above that in the relation between disability and language learning and how to approach it when when we're in that situation. Okay, so are 3 semesters of English enough training? Of course not, right? It's not even just to learn the language. We like going to that stage is just, it's just an impossibility probably. So the hypothesis was right, and the objectives were reached with some limitations because we cannot solve the problem, not with just one practice, of course. And of course, not with just one practice from this group. They should continue practicing during their school years. So as a conclusion, well, there is a necessity and there is a visibility of English language in special education centers. And of course, there are benefits of children participation in English language acquisition. As I said before, every other children was interested in learning English. They were interested and they were motivated. They liked, some of them said that they liked their mathematics class more when they started including English. So, and this is how people should learn English, right? Should learn a language. So forcing them to Spanish is one thing. Motivating them to Spanish is a very different thing. But what is happening right now is forcing. So if they go little by little motivating them, that's very different outcomes. And the same with this. So if Spanish speaking children get motivated into English language acquisition, we can have more opportunities of participation and more opportunities of social interaction among them, right? So there is definitely a need for inclusion, and there is a very big importance of continuous learning and training all of these people who are studying this beautiful, beautiful bachelor. And these are some of my references, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, I'm very open to listen to them and try to do my best.
Thank you, Luz. So yeah, if you have any questions, please, you can either raise your hand or type them in the chat box. Olivia.
Hi, I did have a question. Was it hard to like justify the need of teaching English? Because I think that special education itself is like very polemic about the needs. And adding English, I think it's like, why would you need to to teach English if there are many other necessities in special
Yes,
education?
that was the biggest barrier for this practice. The biggest barrier was to convince the teachers that this was going to be helpful to their kids. The first thing that they say is like, no, they don't have English classes, so this doesn't go. Like take it off, take it away. But the approach that we took was subject matter. So what we did was when they had to practice teaching mathematics, they taught the mathematics class and then they do a review of it, but adding English vocabulary to it. So it was the same class, they repeated it. So they could see some sort of benefit, and they actually responded to the English class better than the first one. And some of them actually consolidated some of the knowledge of the mathematics class. So raising awareness is not easy. Having the permission, it wasn't easy. There was a teacher who completely said, no, this is not going to happen. So my student had to tell her that she wasn't going to do it, but she did. She didn't tell me, of course, she told me after it happened. But this is the biggest issue. They don't even know that their students speak English, and they have them there, and it is that bad it's that big of a problem that they think that their students don't speak English. But once you go there and make a research and just tell them, 48% of your students speak English or have some sort of background there, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know. So some teachers were very actually surprised of the responses of their students because they didn't expect that. It is complicated. It was the biggest barrier. There is no easy way to do this. It's just going there, trying to get data from them and try to convince the teachers.
Thank you. And do we have any other participation or comment? Apparently, we don't have any more. So thank you, Luz Licea, at Benemérita en Centenaria Escuela Normal de Jalisco. We present you with this certificate of participation por su valiosa contribución como ponente del reporte de investigación Use of English to Bolster Inclusion in Special Education Centers en el marco del Congreso Nacional de Formadores en Escuelas Normales. Thank you so much for your valuable input.
Thank you. Thank you, Fine.
And I would like to invite everyone to continue with the next presentations. That's